Going on, guys? Coming to you in the dark, because some stories are best told in the dark. And to me, this is a dark story. It's kind of personal. Sounds like bats in the trees where I'm at. It is. And there's supposed to be a bear up here somewhere, so hopefully we don't run into it. And it's meant to be dark. I shot a video in the dark once and somebody commented and said, "Do you know you shot your video in the dark?" So yeah, I realized that. This happened to me, and I touched on it a little bit in a video I had done a while back about warning signs and the different things. So I'm going to go back and cover a little bit of that part, and then I'm going to tell you the second part of what happened. If you've been following this channel, I told a story once about my mother had to be in and out of the hospital a lot when I was a kid, and my dad drove a truck, so I was left alone quite a bit and got in a lot of trouble growing up. But there was one particular night that she started screaming and crying, and my dad had to take her to the emergency room. And I was in 6th grade. So that left me asleep on the couch and my sister asleep in the back bedroom. And they had left, and they hadn't a bit more been gone, probably 15 minutes, until I was woken by something. I don't know what it was. It was black. It's like a shadow drifting over top of me, and I was unable to move. I was frozen with fear. Now, some people might think this is sleep paralysis, and perhaps it was, but I don't think so. I don't necessarily believe in sleep paralysis and the excuses they give for sleep paralysis. If the stuff they say is true, people wouldn't be able to sleepwalk. You wouldn't be able to turn over in your sleep if you are still asleep and you're paralyzed. And you wake up, your mind wakes up. I don't buy that excuse at all for sleep paralysis. If you've ever had it happen to you where you've seen something, or as they like to say, hallucinated, you know what's in the room with you. Well, this happened to me, and as this thing come down the hall, the only way I can describe this was a shadow figure. Wasn't in the figure of a man or a person. It was more of a cloud, a rolling cloud. And as this thing come down the hallway, the couch I'm laying on starts shaking, and I can feel it vibrating and shaking. And it stops right over top of me, and it's like it's just pressing me through that couch and just sitting there rolling and rolling. And finally, I don't know what happens to it, but I'm able to sit up, and when I do, I scream. I take off running to my sister's room, wake her up, and I tell her what happened. Of course, my scream woke her up. So I tell her what I saw, and I tell her what happened to me. And she kind of looks at me kind of funny, tells me to lay down on the love seat she had in her room and go back to sleep, because I was supposed to go to school the next day. Well, as I laid on the love seat and eventually started to drift off to sleep, I would be awoken by a sound that sounds like a shovel going into sand, going into dirt, if you would, like a grave. And I wouldn't a bit more get to sleep till I'd hear "ch." And I asked her, I said, "Do you hear that?" She told me no. Well, that happened about probably 5 times or so. I never did go back to sleep. I didn't go to school that day. That stayed with me for a long time. Years later, she told me that she had seen the same thing 2 weeks earlier in the same place where I was laying. About 11 o'clock one night, she was up watching TV, And she said that's what scared her so bad. It wasn't my scream that scared her as bad as when I told her what I saw, because she too thought maybe she had dreamed. So we fast forward on. This is the second part. I never told y'all this. We move on. My dad will not hear talk like that at all. Most men in the family don't want to hear of any kind of paranormal goings on at all. They don't believe in it, and they kind of get angry if you talk about it. And I remember discussing that with him, and he would tell me it was just a dream, and that's all, and let's just move on from it. Well, I couldn't move on from it. It stayed with me for a long, long time. So now, years later, in 2018, I go visit my dad. Now, he's not got dementia, maybe a touch of it, but he's not got it real bad. He knows who I am, knows who he is, knows who everybody is, and he's fine. So it's kind of hard for me to write this off to dementia. I'm sitting there talking to him one day, and he says, he said, this whole house is full of ghosts. I said, what did you say? I cannot believe that come out of your mouth, Dad. He said, yeah. He said, I sit here, and he said, I'll watch these things go in and out of the bedrooms and go across the hallway and enter into the other bedroom. He said, sometimes I see more than one. I said, I thought you didn't believe in stuff like that. He said, I didn't used to. Then he goes on to tell me that he wakes up and his arm is being held up in the air by something. But when he wakes up, his arm falls. And he tells me that happened to him twice in that old house. And then he goes on to tell me that once he woke up and his leg was being lifted up. Well, I didn't really know if this was, maybe his mind doing things to him a little bit. But he got ready to pass away. And I remember talking to my stepmom, sitting there with her. And I told her, I said, Dad said that he sees stuff now, and he's seeing shadow figures go across from bedroom to bedroom. And I said, and he also says that he wakes up and they're holding his arm up, his hand up in the air when he wakes up in the recliner. And I said, do you think this is his mind doing this to him, or is he just dreaming this? And she gets this look on her face, as white as a ghost, if you will. And she tells me that your father was screaming one night, hollering, and she said, I looked up to see something pulling at his leg. She said, I couldn't see it, but I could see his leg was being tugged on, and his pant leg, while he was in that recliner, and said like it was trying to pull him out into the floor. And she said, I didn't know what to think about that, but she told me that's when she's decided that she's ready to leave. And I could tell she was scared. So my father passed on, and I sold that old house. A friend of mine, I don't live very far from it now, near the graveyard, but I sold that old house. And I remember walking through it the last time. It was empty, everything vacant. And I just thought about the trauma that old house had seen with my mother, who had her legs amputated and had cancer, diabetes, and the misery and the sorrow that was in that house. And they say that attracts stuff like that. And I remember getting this feeling before I left that house that something was watching me from the darkness, from the corners. I closed the door and I sold it, and I never went back. Not been back today. Don't even like to walk past it. But that stuck with me for the rest of my life since then. I've often thought about that, wrote it off to sleep paralysis, but in my mind I knew better, because when me and my sister got up that morning and come down the hallway, the couch was moved out into the floor, kind of catty corner, just a little, maybe about 8 inches, but enough to tell that it had vibrated, like I said. And she couldn't explain how it got that way. So this story hung with me for a long time. If you'll remember, I told you all, my followers, that before my mom had her legs amputated, she had an uncle, and he was in a wheelchair. He had his legs amputated, and she could hear the wheelchair roll up and down the hallway because his wheelchair had a certain squeak in it, and every time the wheels rotated, it would make this squeak. And she said that she got woke up several nights hearing that squeak, and that was her warning that she was going to lose both her legs. And she did. She told me that years before she lost her legs. But I just wanted to tell you all this story. I've got some personal stories that's happened to me. Not a whole lot of stuff, but just enough to make it weird, I guess. The other personal story was the thing I saw in the sky. If y'all seen that video, if you hadn't, go back and check it out. I don't think it was a spaceship, more or less. I think it was some sort of portal that opened up in the sky. I've never seen anything like it. But those two stories right there are really personal to me. It's something that I just can't explain. I don't know what done that, but I do believe in shadow people. I believe in shadow figures. I didn't used to. But when you live around these old mountains and you see a lot of the strangeness that goes on here that maybe the rest of the world don't see, because these are the oldest mountains in this country, you kind of wonder what left that behind. What left that spirit behind, or is it even a spirit at all? Is it something that's always been here? Was it in the Garden of Eden? You just wonder, was it conjured up by Native Americans? Was it here before they was? But whatever, the fact is, it is here. So I hope you all don't have to contend with anything like that. It's a lot for a boy who was probably 12 years old to experience at the time. Seems like it was around the same time I did see the lights in the sky, or the light. But anyway, I promised you all I would do this video. I don't know how long I'll leave it up, but I did want to tell you all the story I promised you, and that's it. It's kind of hard for me to tell, relive it, think about it, but I told it. And I will catch you guys later. The sun's just getting ready to come up here in an hour or so, so gonna go enjoy the rest of the night. You all take care, and I'll see you soon.